Hello, I'm Gary Lyon and welcome to Access All Areas. Plenty to talk about Damien Barrett and what was a very emotional weekend.
It was, Gaz. The tributes to Phil Walsh, they were so simple yet so beautifully powerful. And the key to it, Gaz, in my take on what happened on the weekend, was that they were just authentic, wasn't it? It happened organically. There was no one pointing players to form these circles initially when it started on the Friday night. Alistair Clarkson and Nathan Buckley with Hawthorn and Collingwood. And then it just followed throughout the weekend that this is what happened, and it was done as well as it could have possibly been done. Yeah,
look, I reckon in times like this, the supporter base, which is a massive part of the whole football community, look to the players and look to the coaches and the clubs for a lead. And they got the best lead of all time on Friday night when Clarko and Bucks came together. Then the two playing groups came together, and I think that was the symbolism that the rest of the footy community needed to say, OK, this is how we go about this. It's respectful, it's bigger than any silly game of football, and I just want to congratulate everyone that was involved in it. It was humbling to watch it.
You draw a line from what happened at the Grahams themselves to yesterday at Adelaide Oval, where 20,000 people rolled up to listen to a siren sound in a very symbolic way, and a ceremony around that. But that was something, again, that happened authentically and organically, and it wasn't... they weren't told what to do, they just made it happen and did it well.
We were all on media over the weekend, and you never know how you should react to these sorts of things, and you never know what to say, and you never really know how to deal with it. I reckon the AFL, well, not that they need a pat on the back, but they got it right across the board. Adelaide Oval got it right, playing the siren, opening the gates and all that stuff. So, well done, everyone. I guess our attention now turns to the playing group, without ever forgetting about the family of Philip Walsh. But from our perspective here today, how are they going to get themselves up for a game of footy?
The fact it's a travel requirement for that first game back, is that potentially a good thing for this club?
Well, people say that, when you're... in a normal circumstance, when you're not playing great footy, it's always a cliche to say, it's good to get on the road and get away. Well, the reality is you're going to play one of the best performed teams in the competition, who also got their own issues in terms of Phil Walsh was there for such a long period of time. So there's a poignancy in all of that, that the two clubs of West Coast and Adelaide. So it's not something I don't think we will dwell on, regardless of what happens in that game. We'll watch it, and our hearts will go out to everyone, and we'll watch it for the spectacle that it is. Yeah,
and look, the footy club, as it has acknowledged so well over the course of the weekend, needs to move on as well. And there's now two processes at play with the coaching situation. There'll be an interim one appointed. We expect it to be, and it'll be announced today, that we expect it to be Scott Camporelli being assisted by David Teague, and David Noble also, the overseer of all things footy there, having a role as well. But then they've got another process, haven't they, beyond that? For the permanency of it.
And I think that's for another day, perhaps. And let's move on to what else has happened over this round of footy, which became secondary in lots of ways. The Essendon Footy Club and the North Melbourne Footy Club are the two stories that come out, but Port Adelaide not too far behind. They're the three great disappointments, aren't they? I mean, the issues of the weekend, the results of the weekend, rather, put a really fierce spotlight on Essendon particularly.
Yeah, they did. I mean, they played an elimination final last year, Essendon and North Melbourne. It was a great game, and you mentioned Port Adelaide there. That was a prelim finalist alongside North Melbourne. They've both been massive falls.
Who's in the bigger hole?
I would argue that North Melbourne has probably had the biggest fall to this point. So I know their record's not as bad as the other two clubs.
You think they've missed their opportunity?
Yeah, I do. I don't think they've got the luxury of having the season they've had when they've topped up. Initially 2 years ago with Del Santo, and then you bring a man who's 32 years of age before he plays his first game for North Melbourne, Jared Waite, into that list. And obviously Sean Higgins has been a good recruit. But look what it does to your list, though, when you bring those people in.
I mean, there's glaring odd two men out in this, if you like. Freo, Hawthorn, Sydney, along with West Coast, clearly the top four sides. And there you've got the other two who are wedged in there. There are a couple of anomalies, given that Boomer Harvey and Dustin Fletcher are both about 73 and still going around. But North played in a prelim. Now, you can famously go back to Richmond under Danny Frawley when they played in that prelim and thought they were perhaps closer than they were, and then recruited accordingly, and it backfired, and it took a hell of a long time to recover. There's still water to go under the bridge. I've been pretty strong with North all the way, but I tell you, I've never been shakier.
Yeah. Do you still think they're a hope? Is that what you're saying?
They may still get in the 8. Their run home is OK, but that's a dangerous thing in itself.
I don't see any urgency, despite the recruitment they've made. I just see a club that's just happy to meander through and almost have excuses, like, OK, we're good in some games or we lost, but geez, when we're unlucky. I just don't get the urgency, guys.
Brad Scott wanders back into that group and takes charge, and he needs to put a stamp very quickly on it, doesn't he?
What about the Saints who fixed up Essendon yesterday? Can we read something pretty significant into this?
Yeah, I mean, I know that the whole week, or most of the week, the focus will be on Essendon and Herd and everyone else, but we should never forget what brought about it. And it was unbelievable pressure from this young St Kilda side. Alan Richardson has been able to put in place the style of footy, and they have bought in. And that's what you want. I mean, that's the sign that you're on the right track. And this was just an absolute slaughter fest in the end.
Yeah.
And
it was morbid.
It was more, well, not from St Kilda's point of view. They loved it. They've been on the end of these for a while, the Saints. So to see a side then turn around and get a kill like this and really go for the jugular is a great thing.
Yep.
But it's encapsulated in Joe Watson, this whole Essendon Footy Club and this side. He has carried this side almost single-handedly, spiritually and emotionally and from a leadership point of view. And for all the world, looks like it's just...
What are you seeing when you see Joe Watson?
Well, for all the world, looks like it's worn him down. And it's questioned. He looks like he's questioning his love for the game and all those issues. And I mean, a 200th game and he comes out and has one kick. I mean, I love Joe Watson as much as anyone, and I love his leadership, and I love the way he handles himself and controls himself. Looks to me like that WADA decision to appeal it has sucked the life out of him and the enjoyment of the game. And I can understand that.
All right, look, there's still 9 matches left of this season. Are you suggesting for him to take a break? Or
never be so bold as to suggest that, because he's such a proud footy person. There's only something Joe can do. And
are you suggesting maybe the leadership, though, is something that he needs to consider right now?
Not now, no. End of the year is the time for all that. Because he is such a great leader, he will never contemplate that right now. I mean, maybe at the end of the year, he spoke to Matty Lloyd in the Sunday Age over the weekend about that very point, but he just looks worn down, and I absolutely understand it.
Okay. We'll move on to the Gold Coast Suns, Gaz. We spoke this time last week of a club in turmoil, and it still is in many respects, but Charlie Dixon has been a tease for much of his career, and yet puts in a performance like you did on the weekend.
Yeah.
It just makes you realise why there is a $750,000 offer for him by the Brisbane Lions.
Well, there's two ways to look at this. Obviously, North Melbourne were hopeless. It's almost a bigger indictment for me on the Gold Coast, the way that they played. I mean, where was this passion? Where was the spirit? Where was this Charlie Dixon form? Where was all this other stuff over the last 10 weeks? And don't turn around and tell me it came back because Gary Ablett came back.
Well, it did.
Well, that's an even bigger indictment on the football club.
We're only dealing with facts. It actually coincided with that very moment.
No, but I'm saying if they are putting it down to the one fact that the captain has come back, that's a disgrace for that footy club. What have they been doing for the last 8 weeks, where they're sitting around twiddling their thumbs waiting for one man to come back to say, well, now we'll start playing properly? I mean, that is a pathetic indictment on a footy club if that's the case. And Charlie Dixon needs to have a good hard look at himself as well, because I haven't seen that passion and intensity and want to be the best player in the competition before the weekend. So where's that been, Charlie? And let's see whether we can maintain this from this point forward. If that's the standard you're going to set, or is it a one-off?
Strong words there, Gaz. Gary Ablett, he did come back, and he was proppy early. He didn't want to go into some contests, and I'm totally understandable with this one.
Oh, my word, look at the time. That's inside the first 30 seconds. So he then did what no one ever has questioned Gary Ablett about doing, and that is be the best player, Nat Fyfe now has taken the mantle, but he is a phenomenal, freakish, unbelievable footy player.
He's first up after 14 weeks off.
Spell. 3 goals, 30-odd touches. And look, maybe the events of the past 10 weeks where he's been questioned about his leadership, and maybe he's been more, he's a hands-off leader, it's my opinion and it's my understanding. Maybe he's been stung into action to say, well, I've got to get more hands-on. And if that's the case, then that's a great result. What never has been questioned is his footy ability, and he's just done that again.
Didn't get some assistance from a teammate here, Gaz. Rookie player Tuke Miller decides to push Jack Zeeble, who goes into Gaz.
Yeah, just be careful, Tuke. You don't want to be sending the skipper back out again. He's a good player, Tuke Miller. There's a couple of young kids in there that could hold their head up, and that's my point. There's a couple of high-profile, serious players who need to get on board, and they did, belatedly.
Now, I reckon if you were coaching an AFL team, you'd be like Damien Hardwick was at three-quarter time of his game against GWS. This is really old-fashioned stuff, Gaz, and normally I don't like it, but I do on this occasion.
Well, Players Association might have something to say about hands-on players.
It's genuine though, wasn't it? It was authentic. It wasn't contrived.
I loved it. And you talk to coaches about these sorts of things because I'm more of that school, and they say you can't. If you trot it out every week, it becomes passé and the players will just raise their eyebrows. But if you've got it up your sleeve for the special occasion, the effectiveness can be dramatic. And they got across the line when they needed to, which is a sign, again, of how far the Tigers have advanced. It was a good win.
This is a terrible look we're about to show you. Toby Green spitting at Miles there from Richmond. He's probably going to get a fine. I would somehow like to make that stronger. That is a disgusting thing he's done.
I'm with you, Damo, and for anyone who thinks there's some ambiguity about it, just ask yourself seriously. Are you serious about the ambiguity? There is doubt about whether the spit hit the player or not, and I can understand that. But
and the argument that they're former teammates and good mates, it doesn't wash with me. I can't recall ever having spat at or been,
no,
had to spit at someone who I'm close with.
Hey, there's a young man that made his debut on the weekend. Talk about feel-good stories. This boy, Caleb Daniel, was an unbelievable underage player for South Australia.
Yep.
But the one question was always his height.
Yep.
Now, Davo, I want you to tell me, you're the smartest man in football. Is he the smallest player in the competition? And if so, where does Boomer Harvey fit? Because Boomer has proven over the last 103 years that you can play regardless of size, height or anything else. So he's the inspiration. Is he bigger than Boomer or not?
Well, he's listed as 168 centimetres.
Caleb Daniel is?
Yes. Boomer Harvey's listed in this year's AFL book as 175.
Boomer?
Yeah, but we went back to 2001 yearbook. Boomer was listed at the same height as Caleb Daniels. 168. So he's grown 7 centimetres, Gary, over the cross 14 AFL yearbooks.
Well, I suggest by the time Boomer retires in another 8 years, he'll be playing in the ruck, if that's the case. If he's still growing 7
he's still growing.
No. Our point is that if you are good, regardless of what, your physical dimensions, and Sam Mitchell's always the one for me, too slow, but just happened to win league best and fairest wherever he played.
Yep.
And nearly won one at the top level. So I love seeing it out there, and he was fantastic.
Now, I'm not buying this next story, guys. I'm not buying the reason for Andreas Everett
now, let me tell you this.
Doing one-fingered celebrations.
Before we go to the sound, what happens in the middle of an AFL season is all of us go a bit ratty. Like a bit batty in the mind.
You regularly do.
I regularly do, and I think Matty Richardson might have as well. Have a listen to this.
Just a little index finger touch. Now, he does that because he's a germaphobe. He doesn't like to get too much contact on his hands, his palms.
He's got a bit of a onesie about it, and I think it's got to stop, Richo.
He's germaphobe, so he just doesn't want to touch too much skin.
It's a germaphobe, Gary.
Please.
So he puts out the one finger.
What is that from Richo? Is that the sort of...
It might be true, but I'm not buying it.
Well, it just happens to play in the most physical contact game of all, yet he doesn't want to touch hands after a goal. Richo, we need to talk to you, young man, immediately. Hey, Damo, nice. Thanks for being here, and thanks for watching Access All Areas. We'll be back next Monday. Catch you then. Goodbye.